The red sun of Zarian Prime cast long shadows across the rocky ground. Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his face as he looked at the broken ship around him. The USS Meridian lay in pieces, smoke still rising from her damaged engines. 3 days ago, they had been flying through space on a simple research mission. Now half his crew was dead. "Captain, we need to move," Lisa Parks said, her voice shaking. The young biologist clutched her scanner with white knuckles. "The readings are getting stronger. Something big is coming." Jake nodded and checked his weapon. The plasma rifle felt heavy in his hands, but he knew it might be their only hope. Around him, the remaining crew members gathered their supplies. Ben Carter, the ship's engineer, carried a medical kit and emergency beacon. Only 12 people were left from the original crew of 30. "What exactly are we dealing with?" Jake asked Lisa. "The locals call it the Vorthik," she replied, reading from her device. "The computer says it's the apex predator of this planet. 12 feet tall, crystalline skin that can't be cut, and it hunts using telepathic abilities. No one has ever survived an encounter with it." Jake felt his stomach drop. He had fought pirates and hostile aliens before, but this was different. This creature had ruled this planet for centuries. It had never known defeat. "How long do we have?" he asked. "Based on the vibrations in the ground, maybe an hour," Ben said quietly. "It's been tracking us since we crashed." Jake looked at his people. They were scared, tired, and far from home. Most of them were scientists, not soldiers. But they were counting on him to keep them alive. "We set up a defense in the medical bay," Jake decided. "It's the most secure part of the ship. We seal the doors and wait for rescue." They moved quickly through the broken corridors of the ship. Outside, the strange plants of Zarian Prime swayed in the alien wind. Everything here was wrong. The purple sky, the double moons, the way the air tasted like metal. The medical bay was small but had thick walls. Jake positioned his people behind overturned tables and broken equipment. The emergency beacon blinked red in the corner, sending their distress signal into space. "How long until help arrives?" Lisa asked. 3 days, maybe 4, Jake replied. He didn't tell her that rescue ships rarely came this far into unexplored space. They were on their own. The first sign of the Vorthik came as a low rumble in the ground. The ship's remaining lights flickered as something massive moved outside. Jake raised his rifle and motioned for everyone to stay quiet. Then the walls began to shake. The Vorthik was testing their defenses, walking around the crashed ship like a predator circling its prey. Jake could hear its footsteps, heavy, deliberate, patient. This creature was not in a hurry. It knew they had nowhere to run. "Captain," Ben whispered, "the motion sensors show it's about 50 feet away." Jake nodded. Through the small window, he could see movement in the shadows. The Vorthik was huge, even bigger than the reports had said. Its crystalline body caught the red sunlight and threw it back in strange patterns. Sharp spines covered its back, and its arms ended in claws that could cut through steel. But it was the creature's eyes that made Jake's blood run cold. They glowed with an alien intelligence, ancient and hungry. This was not just a mindless beast. It was a thinking, planning predator that had perfected the art of hunting. "It's beautiful," Lisa whispered, staring at the creature through her scanner. "It's death," Jake corrected her. The Vorthik suddenly stopped moving. Its massive head turned toward the medical bay, and Jake realized it was looking directly at them. Even through the thick walls, those glowing eyes seemed to see everything dot, and it began to move again, but this time with purpose. The creature walked to the main entrance of the ship and began tearing through the twisted metal with its claws. The sound was horrible, like nails on glass, but 1,000 times louder. "It's coming inside," Ben said, his voice barely a whisper. "Jake." checked his weapon one more time. The plasma rifle had enough charge for maybe 20 shots. Against a creature that had never been killed, it didn't seem like nearly enough. The sounds of destruction grew closer. The Vorthik was making its way through the ship, taking its time. Jake could hear it smashing through bulkheads and tearing apart equipment. It was enjoying the hunt. "Stay together," Jake told his people. "When it comes through that door, we hit it with everything we have." They waited in the darkness, listening to their own heartbeats and the sounds of their death approaching. The Vorthik was just outside the medical bay now. Jake could smell something strange. Like ozone and burnt metal. The door exploded inward. The Vorthik stood in the doorway, its massive form blocking out the light. It was even more terrifying up close. Its crystalline skin pulsed with inner light, and its telepathic presence pressed against their minds like a crushing weight. "Fire!" Jake shouted. The plasma bolts hit the creature and bounced off harmlessly. The Vorthik didn't even flinch. It stepped into the room and looked at each of them in turn, as if deciding which one to kill first. Then it smiled, showing teeth like crystal daggers. The hunt had begun. The Vorthik moved like liquid death. Its crystalline claws swept through the air, and Lisa Park screamed as she was thrown against the wall. Ben Carter fired his weapon desperately, but the plasma bolts did nothing to the creature's hide. Jake watched in horror as his crew fell one by one. The Vorthik was not killing them quickly. It was playing with them, enjoying their fear. This was what it lived for: the hunt, the terror, the final moment when hope died in its prey's eyes. "Run!" Jake shouted to the survivors, but there was nowhere to go. The medical bay was a trap, and they had walked right into it. The creatures' telepathic presence filled the room like poison. Jake could feel it pressing against his mind, trying to break his will. He fought back, but the Vorthik's mental strength was overwhelming. It had been perfecting this technique for centuries. In minutes, it was over. Jake found himself alone with the beast, his back against the wall. His rifle was empty, his people were dead, and blood covered the floor. The Vorthik approached him slowly, savoring the moment. Jake closed his eyes and waited for death. But instead of claws, he felt something else, a strange sensation in his mind. The Vorthik was reading his thoughts, sorting through his memories like pages in a book. When Jake opened his eyes, the creature was staring at him with a puzzled expression. Its glowing eyes had changed from hungry to confused. The Vorthik tilted, its massive head studying the human like he was something it had never seen before. Jake didn't understand what was happening. The creature should have killed him by now. Instead, it was just standing there, watching him with those alien eyes. Then Jake noticed something. The Vorthik's left arm was damaged. Old wounds covered its crystalline skin, and some of them looked infected. The creature was hurt, and it had been hurt for a long time. "You're in pain," Jake said softly. The Vorthik's head snapped back as if Jake had struck it. Through their telepathic connection, Jake could feel the creature's shock. No prey had ever shown concern for its predator before. Jake slowly reached for the medical supplies scattered on the floor. The Vorthik watched him, but didn't attack. Its confusion grew stronger with each passing moment. "Let me help you," Jake said, holding up a healing compound. "Those wounds look bad." The creature's telepathic presence pressed against Jake's mind again, but this time it was different. The Vorthik was not trying to break his will. It was trying to understand him. Jake took a careful step forward. The Vorthik could have killed him instantly, but it didn't move. Its eyes followed every motion as Jake knelt beside the scattered medical supplies. "I'm not going to hurt you," Jake said, picking up a cleaning solution. "I just want to help." The concept of help was alien to the Vorthik. In its long life, It had never received kindness from another creature. It had only known dominance and submission, predator, and prey. But this human was offering something else entirely. Jake approached the creature slowly, holding the medical supplies where the Vorthik could see them. The beast's claws could have torn him apart, but Jake felt no fear. He could sense the creature's confusion and pain through their mental link. "This might sting a little," Jake said, reaching toward the infected wound on the Vorthik's arm. The creature flinched, but didn't pull away. Jake began cleaning the wound with gentle movements. The Vorthik's crystalline skin was harder than diamond, but the infection had made it soft and painful. As Jake worked, he felt something strange happening. The Vorthik's aggressive telepathic presence was fading, replaced by something else. The creature was experiencing emotions it had never felt before: gratitude, wonder, and something that might have been hope. "There," Jake said, applying the healing compound. "That should help with the infection." The Vorthik looked at its arm, then at Jake. Through their mental connection, Jake could feel the creature's amazement. The pain that had bothered it for months was already beginning to fade. Jake moved to another wound, this one on the creature's shoulder. The Vorthik stood perfectly still, watching every movement. Its glowing eyes had softened, and its telepathic presence felt almost gentle. "What happened to you?" Jake asked as he worked. "These wounds look old." Images flashed through their mental link, memories of fights with other Vorthik, territorial battles that had left the creature scarred and alone. Jake saw the death of the creature's mate, killed by a younger rival. He felt the Vorthik's loneliness, its endless hunger for connection. "You've been alone for a long time," Jake said softly. The creature's response was a wave of sadness so deep that Jake had to steady himself against the wall. The Vorthik had ruled this planet for centuries, but it had never truly lived. It had only survived. Jake finished treating the wounds and sat back on his heels. The Vorthik was still staring at him, but now there was something different in its eyes. The hunger was still there, but it was not hunger for food or death. It was hunger for the thing Jake had given it: kindness. "I'm sorry about your mate," Jake said. The Vorthik's massive head lowered, and for a moment, Jake thought he saw something impossible: tears in those alien eyes. The creature had never grieved properly. It had buried its pain under centuries of hunting and killing. Jake reached out slowly and touched the creature's crystalline skin. The Vorthik didn't pull away. Instead, it leaned into the touch like a cat seeking affection. Through their mental link, Jake felt the creature's wonder. Physical contact without violence was unknown to the Vorthik. It had forgotten what gentle touch felt like. "You don't have to be alone anymore," Jake said. The words hit the Vorthik like a physical blow. It had never considered that possibility. For so long, it had been the apex predator, the thing that other creatures feared and fled from. But this human was offering something it had never expected: companionship. The creature's telepathic presence wrapped around Jake's mind like a warm blanket. For the first time in its long life, the Vorthik felt something other than hunger, rage. It felt connected to another living being. Jake smiled and continued treating the creature's wounds. Outside, the alien sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. But inside the medical bay, something impossible was happening. The galaxy's most feared predator was learning to trust. 3 days passed on Zerion Prime. Jake had expected to be dead by now, but instead, he found himself living alongside the galaxy's most feared predator. The Vorthik had not left his side since that first night in the medical bay. Jake had started calling the creature Kethmer, after learning its name through their growing telepathic connection. The name meant shadow hunter in the ancient language of its people. But to Jake, it was just becoming a friend. Each morning, Kethmer would disappear for a few hours and return with fresh water and strange fruits that grew in the planet's caves. Jake had been amazed the first time this happened. The creature was bringing him food, caring for him like he had cared for it. "You don't have to do this," Jake had told the creature on the second day, but through their mental link, Jake could feel Kethmer's response. The creature wanted to help. It was a new feeling, and Kethmer was exploring it like a child with a new toy. Jake spent his time repairing parts of the ship and tending to Kethmer's wounds. The healing was going well, and the creature seemed stronger each day. But more than that, it seemed happier. On the third evening, as they sat together watching the double moons rise, Kethmer shared its memories with Jake. The telepathic connection deepened, and Jake saw the creature's long life unfold before him. He saw Kethmer as a young hunter, learning to kill from its parents. He saw the brutal fights for territory, the endless cycle of violence that had shaped its existence. He saw the death of its mate, a beautiful creature with silver-blue crystal skin, killed by a rival during mating season. Jake felt tears on his cheeks as he experienced Kethmer's grief. The creature had been alone for over 50 years, with no one to share its pain or joy. It had become a perfect killer because it had nothing else to live for. "I'm sorry," Jake whispered. "I'm so sorry. You had to go through that alone." Kethmer's response was a wave of gratitude, so strong that Jake had to grip the ground to keep from falling over. No one had ever apologized to the creature before. No one had ever cared about its pain. But then Kethmer did something unexpected. It began exploring Jake's memories in return. Through their mental link, the creature experienced human emotions for the first time. Jake tried to pull back, but Kethmer was gentle. It sorted through his memories like a scholar reading books, fascinated by each new discovery. The creature saw Jake's childhood on Earth, his training as a starship captain, his love for exploration and discovery. That it found the painful memories. Jake's wife Amy, killed in a mining accident on the moon colony. His daughter Claire, who barely knew him because he was always away on missions. The loneliness that had driven him to the stars, searching for something to fill the empty spaces in his heart. Kethmer experienced human love for the first time through Jake's memories of Amy. The creature was amazed by the depth of emotion, the way Jake had been willing to sacrifice everything for the woman he loved. Among the Vorthok, mating was about survival and territory, but humans loved with their entire being. The creature also felt Jake's regret about his daughter. Through their link, Jake showed Kethmer pictures of Claire, a bright-eyed girl who looked just like her mother. Jake had missed her first steps, her first words, her first day of school. He had chosen duty over family, and now his daughter was nearly grown. "I failed her," Jake said aloud. "I thought I was protecting her by staying away, but I was just protecting myself from the pain." Kethmer's response was immediate and strong. The creature shared its own understanding of loss, but also something else, forgiveness. Through their mental link, Jake felt Kethmer's belief that love was never truly lost, even when separated by distance or time. "You think I should go back to her?" Jake asked. The creature's answer was a warm feeling of encouragement. Kethmer had learned about human families through Jake's memories, and it understood that bonds between parents and children were sacred. That night, Jake dreamed of Earth. He saw Claire as a young woman, working in a laboratory much like the one where he had met Amy. She was brilliant and beautiful, and she was alone. In his dream, she looked up at the stars and wondered if her father was still alive. Jake woke with Kethmer's massive head resting near his shoulder. The creature had been watching over him while he slept, protecting him from the dangers of the alien world. "Thank you," Jake said, reaching out to touch the creature's crystalline skin. Kethmer's eyes glowed softly in the darkness. Through their mental link, Jake felt the creature's contentment. For the first time in decades, Kethmer was not alone. During the day, Jake worked on repairing the ship's communication system. He wanted to send a message to Claire, to tell her he was alive and that he loved her. But more than that, he wanted to tell her about Kethmer and the amazing bond they had formed. "The galaxy thinks you're a monster," Jake told the creature as they worked together. "But you're not. You're just lonely, like I was." Kethmer helped by holding tools and components with its precise claws. The creature was remarkably gentle for something so large and powerful. It had learned to control its strength, to be careful. Around the fragile human, it had come to care for Dot. As Jake worked, he thought about the future. Rescue ships would come eventually, and he would have to make a choice. He could return to his old life, to the loneliness and regret that had driven him to the stars. Or he could stay with Kethmer, building a new life on this strange world. But there was a third option, one that grew stronger each day. Jake had seen the creature's intelligence, its capacity for growth and change. What if they could leave this world together? What if they could show the galaxy that predators and prey could become partners? That evening, as they shared another meal of alien fruits, Jake made a decision. He would repair the ship's beacon and call for rescue. But when the ships came, he would not abandon his friend. "We're going to change everything," Jake told Kethmer. "The galaxy isn't ready for what we've become." The creature's response was a mixture of excitement and fear. Kethmer had never left its world, had never imagined life beyond the hunt. But through Jake's memories, it had seen the wonders of the galaxy, distant worlds, alien cities, the vast community of species that made up galactic civilization. "Don't worry," Jake said, sensing the creature's anxiety. "We'll face it together." Kethmer pressed its massive head against Jake's shoulder, and Jake felt the creature's trust flowing through their mental link. The galaxy's most feared predator had chosen to follow a human into an unknown future. Their bond was complete. The rescue ships arrived on the 7th day. Jake watched from the crashed medical bay as 3 massive vessels descended from the purple sky. The largest was the USS Titan, a Federation battleship with enough firepower to level a small city. "They came," Jake said to Kethmer, who was crouched beside him. The creature's telepathic presence was filled with nervousness. Through their mental link, Jake could feel Kethmer's fear. The creature had never seen spaceships before, and the massive vessels looked like predators from the sky. "It's okay," Jake said, placing his hand on the creature's crystalline skin. "These are my people. They came to help." But as the ships landed, Jake began to worry. The Titan's weapons were still active, and armed soldiers were pouring out of the landing shuttles. This looked more like a military operation than a rescue mission. Admiral Roy Clark was the first to reach the crashed ship. Jake recognized the older man from news broadcasts. He was known for his aggressive tactics against alien threats. Behind him came Colonel Nina Bell and a team of heavily armed Marines. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Clark said, his voice echoing through a speaker. "System, we're here to extract you. Please come out with your hands visible." Jake stepped out of the medical bay, but he motioned for Kethmer to stay hidden. The creature was massive, and Jake knew the soldiers would panic if they saw it. "Admiral," Jake said, saluting. "Good to see you, sir." Clark looked around at the destroyed ship and the alien landscape. "We lost your signal days ago. How many survivors?" "Just me," Jake replied quietly. The Admiral's expression hardened. "What happened to your crew?" Jake hesitated. How could he explain what had happened without mentioning Kethmer? There was an accident during the crash. I was the only one who made it to the medical bay. Colonel Bell stepped forward, her scanner beeping rapidly. "Sir, I'm reading a massive life form inside the ship. It's huge, and it's moving." Jake's heart sank. He had hoped to get the rescue team away from the ship before they detected Kethmer. "Colonel, I can explain. Stand back." Bell shouted, raising her weapon. Class A threat detected. The Marines spread out, surrounding the ship with plasma rifles and heavy weapons. Through their mental link, Jake could feel Kethmer's confusion and growing fear. "Wait," Jake said, stepping between the soldiers and the ship. "You don't understand." But it was too late. Kethmer emerged from the medical bay, its massive form filling the doorway. The creature's crystalline skin caught the light from the yacht ship's weapons, creating a spectacular display of colors. "Open fire," Colonel Bell commanded. "No!" Jake shouted, but the soldiers were already pulling their triggers. The plasma bolts struck Kethmer and bounced off harmlessly, just as Jake knew they would. The creature stood there, confused and frightened, looking to Jake for guidance. "Hold your fire," Admiral Clark ordered. "It's not attacking." The Marines lowered their weapons, but they kept them ready. Everyone stared at the massive predator, waiting for it to make a move. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Clark said slowly, "what exactly is that thing?" "His name is Kethmer," Jake replied. "He's the reason I'm alive." Colonel Bell shook her head. "Sir, that's a Vorthik. They're classified as the most dangerous predator in this sector. It should have killed him instantly." "But it didn't," Jake said firmly. "It saved me." Through their mental link, Jake could feel Kethmer's distress. The creature was overwhelmed by the hostile thoughts of the soldiers. It had never experienced such concentrated fear and hatred before. "Stand aside, Captain," Admiral Clark said. "We need to eliminate that threat." "No," Jake said, moving to stand directly in front of Kethmer. "I won't let you hurt him." The soldiers raised their weapons again, but Jake didn't move. He could feel Kethmer's massive presence behind him, the creature's fear mixing with gratitude for Jake's protection. "Morrison, get out of the way," Colonel Bell demanded. "That thing is dangerous." "Not to me," Jake replied. "He's my friend." Admiral Clark studied Jake's face, looking for signs of mental manipulation or alien control. "Captain, that creature has killed thousands of beings. It's an apex predator." "He was," Jake agreed, "but he's changed. We've both changed." Through their mental link, Jake felt Kethmer's decision forming. The creature was preparing to fight, not to attack the soldiers, but to protect Jake from them. The idea horrified Jake. "Don't," Jake said quietly, knowing Kethmer would hear him through their connection. "They're just afraid." But Kethmer's response was clear and strong. The creature would not let anything harm Jake, even if it meant fighting Jake's own people. "Admiral," Jake said, turning to face the older man, "I know this is hard to believe, but Kethmer is not your enemy. He's hurt and alone, and he's been that way for decades. All he needed was someone to show him kindness." "Kindness?" "Colonel," Bell laughed bitterly. "Captain, that thing murdered your entire crew." "Yes," Jake said quietly, "and I forgave him." The words hung in the air like a challenge. The soldiers looked at each other, confused and disturbed. How could a human forgive such a thing? "Morrison," Admiral Clark said slowly, "you're talking about a creature that's killed more people than most wars. You can't just forgive that." "I can, and I did," Jake replied, "because I saw what he really is underneath all that violence. He's just a lonely creature who's been hurt too many times." Behind Jake, Kethmer made a low sound that might have been a purr. The creature was amazed by Jake's words, by his willingness to defend their bond in front of his own people. "Step aside, Captain," Admiral Clark said, his voice hardening. "That's an order." Jake looked at the Admiral, then at Colonel Bell and her Marines, then at the massive warship hovering in the sky. He was outnumbered and outgunned, but he didn't move. "No, sir," Jake said quietly. "I won't abandon him." "Then you'll be court-martialed for treason," Clark replied. "So be it," Jake said. Through their mental link, Jake felt Kethmer's shock and wonder. The creature couldn't believe that Jake was willing to sacrifice his career, his freedom, even his life for their friendship. But more than that, Kethmer felt something else. A deep, overwhelming love for this strange human who had shown him kindness when no one else would. The creature had never experienced such loyalty before, and it changed something fundamental inside him. Slowly, incredibly, Kethmer began to lower himself to the ground. The galaxy's most feared predator was kneeling, not in submission to the soldiers and their weapons, but in response to Jake's incredible act of loyalty. "What's it doing?" Colonel Bell whispered. Jake turned to look at Kethmer, and through their mental link, he felt the creature's decision. Kethmer was choosing to submit, not because he was defeated, but because he had found something worth more than dominance. "He's choosing," Jake said softly. "For the first time in his life, he's choosing love over fear." The soldiers stared in amazement as the massive predator bowed its head to the human who had saved it. It was a sight that would change the galaxy's understanding of what was possible between species. Admiral Clark lowered his weapon slowly. "I've never seen anything like this." "Neither have I," Jake replied, placing his hand on Kethmer's crystalline head. "But it's just the beginning." The sight of Kethmer kneeling before Jake changed everything. Admiral Clark stood in stunned silence, his weapon forgotten in his hands. Colonel Bell and her Marines stared at the impossible scene, the galaxy's most feared predator submitting to a human. "Stand down," Admiral Clark said quietly. "All weapons down." The soldiers lowered their rifles, though they kept their eyes on Kethmer. The creature remained kneeling, its massive head bowed in a gesture of absolute trust. Jake placed both hands on Kethmer's crystalline skull, feeling the creature's emotions through their mental link. There was no fear now, only peace and acceptance. Kethmer had made its choice. "How is this possible?" Colonel Bell asked, her voice filled with wonder. "He was never truly a monster," Jake explained. "He was just alone and hurt. When I showed him kindness instead of fear, it changed him. It changed both of us." Admiral Clark walked closer, studying the incredible bond between human and predator. "Captain Morrison, do you understand what you've done? This creature has been the terror of this sector for centuries." "I understand," Jake replied. "But I also understand that he doesn't have to be that creature anymore. We can all change if someone gives us the chance." Through their mental link, Jake felt Kethmer's gratitude flowing like warm water. The creature had never imagined that it could be anything other than a predator. But Jake had shown it a different way to exist. "Admiral," Jake said, looking up at the older man, "I want to make a proposal." Clark raised an eyebrow. "You're in no position to make proposals, Captain. You're facing court-martial for protecting a hostile alien." "Hear me out," Jake said. "Kethmer isn't hostile anymore. He's intelligent, loyal, and powerful. Instead of destroying him, why don't we find a way to use these qualities?" Colonel Bell stepped forward. "Sir, we can't trust that thing. It's killed thousands of beings." "So have we," Jake replied quietly. "Every soldier in this galaxy has blood on their hands. But we believe in redemption, in second chances. Why shouldn't Kethmer get the same opportunity?" Admiral Clark was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Finally, he activated his communication device. "This is Admiral Clark to Federation Command. I need to speak with the Council immediately." While they waited for the connection, Jake continued. "To comfort Kethmer." The creature was still nervous around the soldiers, but it trusted Jake completely. Through their mental link, Jake could feel Kethmer's curiosity about the ships and the possibility of leaving its world. "Are you ready for this?" Jake asked silently. Kethmer's response was immediate and strong. The creature was ready to face whatever came next, as long as Jake was beside it. The communication came through, and Admiral Clark spoke quickly with the Federation Council. Jake could only hear one side of the conversation, but it was clear that the council was shocked by the news. "Yes, sir," Admiral Clark was saying. "The Predator is completely docile. It's formed some kind of bond with Captain Morrison." "No, sir. There's no sign of mental manipulation." "Yes, I understand the implications." The conversation went on for 20 minutes. During that time, Jake watched the soldiers gradually relax around Kethmer. The creature made no threatening moves, instead showing curiosity about their equipment and weapons. One young Marine, a man named Pete Davis, was brave enough to approach. Can I touch it?" he asked Jake. Jake looked at Kethmer, feeling the creature's amusement through their mental link. "He says yes, but be gentle. His skin is harder than it looks." Pete reached out with a shaking hand and touched Kethmer's arm. The crystalline surface was warm and smooth, like polished stone. The creature made a soft humming sound that might have been contentment. "It's beautiful," Pete whispered. Other soldiers began to approach, their fear replaced by wonder. Kethmer allowed them to examine its crystalline skin and incredible structure. The creature was enjoying the attention, something it had never experienced before. Admiral Clark finished his conversation and walked back to Jake. "The council has made a decision. They want to see this bond for themselves." "And?" Jake asked. "You and Kethmer will be taken to the Federation capital. If this alliance is genuine, they want to study it. There are other worlds, other species that have been impossible to contact because of their aggressive nature." Jake felt a surge of excitement. "You're talking about diplomatic missions?" "I'm talking about changing the way the galaxy thinks about predators and prey," Admiral Clark said. "If you can prove that this bond is real and lasting, it could open doors we never imagined." Through their mental link, Jake felt Kethmer's excitement matching his own. The creature was ready for a new purpose, a new way to use its incredible abilities. "There's one condition," Admiral Clark continued. "You'll be accompanied by a full security team at all times. And if the creature shows any signs of reverting to its old nature—" "It won't," Jake said firmly. "I stake my life on it." "You already have," Colonel Bell pointed out. The next few hours were spent preparing for departure. Kethmer was fascinated by the technology of the rescue ships, examining everything with gentle curiosity. The creature was careful not to damage anything, understanding that these machines were important to its new human friends. Jake sent a message to his daughter Claire, telling her he was alive and that he had something incredible to share with her. He wanted to see her again, to rebuild the relationship he had damaged with years of absence. The loading of Kethmer onto the USS Titan required special equipment. The creature was too large for normal transport, so Admiral Clark ordered the cargo bay to be modified. Jake stayed with Kethmer throughout the process, helping the creature understand what was happening. "We're going to see the stars," Jake told his friend. "All the worlds I showed you in my memories." Kethmer's response was a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The creature had never left its planet, but it trusted Jake completely. If Jake said this was the right thing to do, then Kethmer would follow Dot as the ship prepared for departure. Jake stood beside Kethmer in the cargo bay. Through the large windows, they could see Zarian Prime falling away below them. The red sun and purple sky grew smaller until they were just points of light in the darkness. "Are you sad to leave?" Jake asked. Kethmer's answer came through their mental link, images of loneliness and endless hunting, decades of empty existence. The creature was not sad to leave its old life behind. It was excited to begin a new one. The journey to the Federation capital took 5 days. During that time, Jake and Kethmer became celebrities throughout the ship. Word of their incredible bond spread quickly, and soon crew members were visiting the cargo bay to see the impossible friendship. Dr. Ellen Hayes, the ship's chief scientist, spent hours studying their telepathic connection. She was amazed by the depth of their bond, and the way it had changed both beings. "This isn't just friendship," she told Jake. "You've created a new form of interspecies communication. The implications are staggering." Jake watched Kethmer interact with the crew members. The creature was gentle and patient, allowing them to study its crystalline structure and ask endless questions. It was learning to enjoy social contact, something that had been impossible in its old life. On the third day, Kethmer did something that surprised everyone. The creature began to hum, a low, melodious sound that filled the cargo bay with beautiful music. It was the creature's way of expressing happiness. "I've never heard anything like it," said Captain Mary Stone, who had come to visit. "It's beautiful." Through their mental link, Jake learned that Kethmer's people had once been singers. Before they became pure predators, they had created music together. Kethmer was remembering a part of its heritage that had been lost for centuries. When they reached the Federation capital, crowds gathered to see the impossible pair. News of their alliance had spread across the galaxy, and everyone wanted to witness the predator that had chosen love over violence. The Federation Council met them in the Great Hall, a massive chamber filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds. Jake and Kethmer stood before them, their bond evident to everyone present. Chancellor Robert Kim, the leader of the Federation, spoke first. "Captain Morrison, what you and your companion have achieved challenges everything we thought we knew about predator species." "Kethmer isn't just my companion," Jake replied. "He's my partner. Together, we can show the galaxy that any species can choose cooperation over conflict." The Council voted unanimously to create a new diplomatic program. Jake and Kethmer would visit worlds where communication had been impossible, where aggressive species had rejected all contact with galactic civilization. Their first mission was to the Andromeda Cluster, where a species called the Razorhawks had been attacking trade ships for decades. No one had ever successfully communicated with them. "Are you ready for this?" Jake asked Kethmer as they prepared to depart. The creature's response was filled with confidence and excitement. Kethmer had found its new purpose, not as a predator, but as a bridge between species that had never understood each other. As their ship jumped into hyperspace, Jake thought about how much had changed. A few weeks ago, he had been a lonely captain running from his past. Now he was part of something greater, a bond that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of what was possible. Through their mental link, he felt Kethmer's contentment. The creature,